Welcome to Navarero's online video. I didn't really expect to ever be saying those words again, but here we are. Yes, I'm kinda back and I'll be talking about why in a moment. Just for this video, I want to quickly inform you that this will be a bit of a mix between different topics. I started a new playthrough on Aurora Falls on my own custom ministry playstand, which I finally finished. And I also want to talk a bit about the update itself that recently dropped because I don't think I'll be making a video on that. I'm not entirely sure right now. And I also want to quickly mention why I'm even back here to begin with. The reason for that is actually quite sad. Recently, my dad sadly and quite unexpectedly passed away. And right now I'm just looking for games to take my mind off things. So Railroads Online has always been some sort of comfort food for me. So right now it's really doing a good job at just giving me something to do, getting me distracted from the stuff so I don't think about that kind of thing constantly. But yeah, in the end I'll have to see how this goes, what I'm gonna do with it in the long run, if I'm gonna stick to it. It's all up in the air right now. I'm just currently, yeah, doing things day by day, just seeing where it takes me. So yeah, that's the current situation. And for the time being, I'm back playing, and I gotta say, I quite like the new update. It's actually adding quite a few nice things to the game by just having a bit more quality of life. Especially the new map is massive help with running trains. Just being able to flip the switches through the map itself instead of having to teleport around the map, running towards them, or stop the train before it can run past one of the switches. It's just gonna be such an amazing help and make things so much more convenient. So really looking forward to getting into that kind of thing. This whole update, however, it's not perfect. It's far from that. First up, for some unknown reason, the maps are all now flipped. This part down here used to be up there, so therefore north is south, south is north, west is east, and so forth. So while I don't mind too much for the Aurora Falls map, since I don't really or didn't really play too much on it, for the other two maps, it's really messing with my head, and from what I heard, the devs have basically doubled down on the whole thing. They may have accidentally flipped some stuff upside down, and when the sun started going up in the west or something, it just didn't make any sense, and instead of reverting to what it was before, they now doubled down and made sure that the sun rises in the east again, goes down south, and then sets in the west at the end of the day. So it's just they fixed it in the most unfortunate way, and that's kind of par for the course for this game. Let's be honest. So that's a bit weird, and with dev's behavior, I don't expect that to change. However, my real gripes are not even from this update, but from the stuff that came beforehand. So while I can definitely sing the praises for this update with the new interface and everything, that's just working pretty well overall. Stuff like the industry problems with them wasting resources if they get full on one side and just don't double up the output on the other one, or just like the iron mine. You get 5 pieces of iron ore for your resources, but if your output capacity is full and just goes down by one, you waste 4 of them, that kind of stuff. It's really annoying to play around. I don't like it, and there's a lot of other things like that. I still don't enjoy the whole weird Steam cutoff sim, which is basically a top speed nerf for all of the engines. Just the newly bought cars just spawning in anywhere around you instead of the dedicated starting area. I mean, ideally, you should be able to place that area yourself and then have it wherever you want, but it should still be one dedicated place where you can get all the stuff. It's just spawning in everywhere is kind of annoying. The switches being no longer drag to flip over, but instead the whole like left click, right click thing, which is pretty pretty hard to get right. It's left click to flip it to the left here, but if I go to the other side, it's suddenly right click to switch it over to the left. It's very inconsistent. And yeah, just a whole bunch of these things that are kind of ruining the fun to play it. So again, great update. Flawed, but definitely very much appreciated. A huge step in the right direction, but the game overall is still pretty much in the dumps for me. Also, one reason why I'm on the Aurora Falls map right now is that with the current version of the game, my MIA playthrough has turned into a straight up slideshow. I think it's gonna be between 2 and 5 FPS now. It's horrible, definitely completely unplayable, and therefore I decided to just go over to Aurora Falls and finally finish my custom industry layout. That was helped out a bit by us now being able to align the industries to the world grid. So I can have it 180 degrees. I can just go around in full degree increments or 10 degree as I like to do. And that just makes everything a lot easier to place down correctly and later down the line get the track going without any issues. So that's been helping out quite a bit at making this entire thing happen a lot easier. And not having to rely on fine adjustments through Railroad Studio after the fact. And yeah, apart from that, we now also have the step to industry thing going on, which is pretty nice. Let me show you some stuff at the logging camp here, which I've just been trying to set up here. It's working pretty nicely, but it's also not completely flawless. I always like to place my track in a distance from the loading platform that the cranes will just take the product and put it down in the middle of the track. And this is what I achieved here by basically using this piece of track as a measuring stick. 5 meters from the center of the crane should be where the center of the track goes, and then it's all gonna be centered in the middle. However, if I place on the track here and look for the snapping option, this is where the track should be going according to the snapping. And yeah, I don't know how they came up with that, but it's definitely not in the middle. It's still gonna, of course, hit the car with the cargo, so that's still gonna happen, but it's not in the middle and seems like just a weird thing to do there. So that's a bit odd, and I'll just be sticking to my old version here. A bit harder to place it now because in the past, if I placed on a new piece of track, I could basically align move my camera freely and then rotate the track independently of that. Now if I do anything with my camera, it's just gonna snap back to the other position. So if I move it away from that and then just move the camera or even just rotate it, it's just gonna go into a different location and it just doesn't really work that way anymore. Before that, the orientation of my camera was independent of the orientation of my track, and I think that was a better way of handling things, because then I could just look at the track from the side and really make sure that I line it up well. Something like this, but if I now try to move it to the middle of the crane, then it's just gonna snap back and not do it. So I basically need to look from up above or something, and that makes things a bit harder to see and align properly, but well, I can manage. So that thing not perfect, definitely an interesting way of handling things. Also not entirely sure of how well the whole automatically keeping the ground distance and stuff like that is going to work. It seems to have some issues at least. For example, if I try to just make a connection between that piece of track and this one, it's likely gonna have a bit of an issue here. It seems like the end of the track is interacting with the end of the groundwork here and therefore just trying to raise it up or sometimes even bring it further down. And that's just not allowing me to place down the track that easily because now it would be above ground and I just get an error message. I can still sometimes find a spot where I can get it done, something like this. But it's definitely become a bit more fiddly in that way. So while there are certainly some advantages to the new system, it definitely also has quite a few flaws. And I've seen a particularly weird behavior when trying out a few things. So let's go over to this Telegraph post right here. Really, I just wanted to test out if the copy track has the ground restrictions as well. Spoiler, it does not, but it also does something really weird under some circumstances. So if I try to copy this spline, which basically just goes to here, this is really just a straight piece with a change in grade. So it starts rather steep down here and up at the top it kinda evens out. First up, it's changing height. As you can easily see right here, it's getting lower on this end. But also it's gonna start changing the shape once we go over to this point. So yeah, instead of evening out on the left end and being further up here, it suddenly gets higher to the right and having a weird crest there. So I don't know what's happening there. It's a bit weird. So always gotta be aware that the tools are somewhat flawed and that you cannot always expect good results from them. Another thing I noticed with the parallel track tool is that if you copy two pieces of track right after each other, they do not snap to each other. So I could just line it up like this. Maybe if I go with a finer grade, it might be a bit more tough, but it still looks pretty good. So this seems to be working pretty well right now. But yeah, this is just manually aligned. I cannot snap them together. So maybe if I want to lay out a longer parallel piece of track, I may just want to grab every second spline and then just fill in the gaps on the way back to make sure that everything is properly snapped instead of just loosely put together. Although, to be fair, this seems to be doing the trick pretty much. Let's see if it would look even better if I really snapped it. There are some minor gaps in between there. And they seem to be gone now, so yeah, when in doubt, better to just skip every second spline and then just do the rest manually. Snapping definitely delivers better results in some cases, at least. Okay, I think that was all that I wanted to talk about regarding the update. There are few weird things going on and stuff like that, but yeah, this is the main part here. So let's talk about my Aurora Falls map. So this is my custom industry layout. I started it quite a while ago, but back then I kinda didn't feel like finishing it. I wasn't planning on playing on this, and again, if it wasn't for my other map being basically unplayable right now, I maybe wouldn't have gone back to this anyways. But since everything has been made a bit easier to deal with, I decided to just get this done, and I'm planning on making another video about that map in particular and just also delivering a download link for this map version sooner than later. Just gonna have to figure that out. Right now I'm also kinda just playtesting the entire thing. Not gonna be connecting every single industry, but I at least want to get some more stuff done before I make that other video. It's always gonna be a bit of a blind thing, testing these kind of things. I cannot do everything perfectly. So there may be a few things that I miss here and there, but I at least want to make sure that the early game stuff works out. So yeah, what I decided on for this map is that I wanted to have both the wheat farm industry chain and the logging camp, sawmill, and so on industry chain viable from the get-go. So let's go back to the starting area because there's something very important to discuss here. By default, what I put on here is a Montezuma. And yes, this is the version that you would be getting here. This is Monty, black Montezuma engine with the number 1. And yeah, I put out quite a bit of rolling stock here. You would be getting 4 of the regular old logging cars because I don't like the short ones. They are kinda bad with how they have to compress the logs on them and everything. So I would rather stick to the original ones. But since I want to also make the wheat farm chain viable from the get-go, I decided to provide a few cars for that as well. Namely, 4 of the regular Greg sugarcane flat cars. So these are specifically for the pellets. Also 4 of the water tank cars, the small ones. I bought another 4 for this playthrough here, but 4 of them by default are a nice little head start. Definitely better than if you were to have to buy all of them on your own. Since the early game stuff for the wheat farm doesn't really pay out too well, it can be quite tedious, and therefore I decided to give out a bit more rolling stock from the beginning and just making that a bit easier. I mean, depending on which one you want to go for from the get-go, the rest of the cars might not be that useful for you. So if you go logging, all of the other cars are completely useless. If you do the wheat farm stuff, the logging cars don't really matter much. I mean, you will still need to get a firewood supply at some point, but I guess you could always do that using the wood rig anyways. And yeah, last but not least, for the wheat farm industry chain, I decided to also put down 2 cattle cars. And this is due to me having watched Khan's videos on the same map here. Of course on the default industry chain, but he really tried making the wheat farm work, and first up it was an immense grind, and secondly it basically got into a hold once he realized that he couldn't even buy the cattle cars, which is really the first time in that industry chain that you are making a significant amount of money. So I thought just having 2 of them would suffice to get the ball rolling. You can use the other cars to get started and make a bit more money to buy some other ones that you need in between. But in the end, these ones are unlocked much later in the game, and it would be so late that it's really not viable to do the rest to start out with. But yeah, if you have some of the early game cars, like the tankers, like the flat cars over here, you should be able to buy the intermediate cars and then be using these ones to really make some money and hopefully have the entire thing be viable. And that's why I got all of these here. So far it's working out pretty well. I spent a bit more than half of my starting money to buy another 4 of the tanker cars. I still need to connect to the freight depot, which is a bit further south here, what used to be north. Gonna be a bit tough getting there, but I think it should be alright. I at least hope so. If it isn't, then I'll have to reconsider and think about something else for the official release of this map. So let's have a look around what I built here. Basically we have a starting area, and everything past this switch here is what you would get from the get-go. This is what I provide you with, apart from 4 of these tanker cars being missing. So 4 tanker cars, 4 logging cars, 4 flat cars, 2 of the cattle cars, and of course the Montezuma engine. And yeah, that's the default buildings over here plus the firewood depot. It's empty, but just to give you guys a reminder that yeah, you should probably take care of supplies. So the first thing I did from here was go over to the wheat farm. It's a slight decline. I think I go down to 2% grade to some degree here, or to some length. And 2% is the steepest that I have right now. The wells are a bit higher on the map, so you can climb up there empty and come down with the fully loaded cars. Wheat farm, pretty simple and easily connected. Just a loop around and that's about it. And in the other direction we can go to the wells. And yeah, that is plural because I decided to just put down 3 of them. And they work amazingly well. That's another point where I used Railroad Studio here, apart from giving me the funds to buy all the starting rolling stock. Because I placed them perfectly far apart to basically sync them up with the different cars that you can have. If you have 6 of the regular sized water tank cars, you will have the first one being at this well, then another one being in between the wells, the third one being lined up with this one, another one in between, fifth one here, sixth one being behind. And you can load up 3 of them simultaneously, then just pull ahead by one car and then load the other 3. It was pretty much the same way with the smaller tanker cars, apart from there being number 1 at this one, 2, 3, 4 in between, number 5 right here, 6, 7, and 8 right here. 9 would be at the last one, then you would have 10, 11, and 12. I still need 4 more in order to make that work. But yeah, that's basically this setup and it seems to be working pretty alright. I'm still using link and pin, so I'm pretty sure that for the regular size cars or the longer tanker cars, the knuckle couplers are about the same length, so that should be working out. For these ones, it will likely not work out in the beginning, so yeah, I don't know. Can't really do much about it. It doesn't work for both versions, so I decided to go for the one that I'm using. Basically creator bias here. But yeah, that's the wells. That's the only industry where I put down multiple ones. Everything else is only where, yeah, only once. Some notable industries are the sawmill, which is now on the lake where you could usually only find the dredge in the default industry placement. This should give me a good opportunity to make not too steep tag to the logging camp. Also a nice one to the iron ore mine, which is a bit cut off here with a weird border around the map. And yeah, of course, every single industry has a telegraph office here. And from here, I should also be able to connect to a lot of other industries rather nicely. It's usually an industry that I would rather have somewhere in the middle of the map, but it needs a lake to really work out well, to look the part. And the middle of the map doesn't have a lake, so I was basically stuck with this one here. The one on the other side being even further down than this one is already, so while it is already in a dip here, the other side would be so much worse. Does it even show the height difference here, or is it just... I don't know what each single line means, how much height difference there is between them. So I can't really tell how much higher this one is, but there's definitely... This one is on the lower end, and this is at least a tiny bit closer to the regular height level that you will see around the starting area here. And yeah, a few other things that I changed. I put the gold mine a bit further down in the snowy area. the stamp mill really only could find a place in its default location. I tried something over here in another version of my industry layout, but it was kinda gimmicky and I didn't like it too much. Going from the oil field to the refinery, I kept this whole thing. This is a very steep climb, but you can also just go to the back here and maybe even around this place, so you can even it out to go a bit quicker. But this is definitely one of the most extreme and demanding climbs that you can have in this version. Then again, this is very much endgame, so you should be expected to work a bit for it. And yeah, the freight depot is quite a ways away from the starting area. I'm still trying to figure out a track over here, but in the end, while the terrain in between the starting area and this place is a bit tough, the overall height difference should be quite alright. But then again, I had it multiple times already that I thought a bit of terrain was not too much of a challenge. Then I started putting down the track and then I just realized that I completely underestimated the thing, which is also one of the original reasons why I was hesitant at putting out the map or even just finishing it, because this terrain is very tricky. And if I don't act carefully, I could just create challenges which are just tedious and unfun to overcome. So I kind of want to do a bit more testing here in order to figure out if things really work out. So this track, for example, is what I'm currently trying out to see if I can connect from my main area over here. This track would mainly be going to the freight depot to connect to there and get the seed pellets. Would be from this end, it would be a 2% climb pretty much consistently up here, up until this point, and now I kind of need to go back down again. I could also theoretically go around the other side, but this would be much longer, and I don't think it would be much better on the terrain. It's still quite a bit of treacherous terrain. So I'll have to figure all of that out. But yeah, also in the meantime doing something with the logging camp, while I still want to try and make the wheat farm viable as a starting industry chain. I'm also trying to see how this one would play out. I'm pretty confident, however, that this should be a decent connection to both the sawmill and the smelter. Gold mine would be a bit of a different story, but that doesn't really need that much cordwood. Still needs quite a bit, but... Oh no, not the gold mine, the gold smelter, I mean. It should be alright. Famous last words, I guess. But yeah, that's the stuff as I have it so far. I'm gonna have to see how it plays out, how long I'm gonna be playing it, and just seeing if I'm gonna stick with the game for longer now. I'm not entirely sure. Circumstances are special, to say the least, and yeah, I just have to see how things work out in the long run. I'm just basically doing what works for me right now, and we're gonna have to see how it's gonna plan out in the end. But yeah, I think that's about most of the stuff that I can show you guys right now without going into every single industry here. I quickly want to show you guys the sawmill. I placed on a track as a bit of a default connection here, just to have a bridge of pretty much the same thing as I did on my MIA version, and I think also the Lake Valley version, where I just placed on a bridge right next to the platform to make it look a bit more like it is actually properly connected. In the end, the reason why I chose this location over something else where maybe even the sawmill could fit a bit more easily is because this is gonna allow for a very smooth connection to the outside. So this is all still in a bit of a valley right here, and it being on the far end of it, allowing me to just take the uh, basically the cliff around this area to already start the climb. Initially I had it placed over here, but that left me with very little option when it came to climbing out of here. Basically you are so far to the west already that you would need to get to a steeper climb to arrive at the same location in the end. While when I start the climb already on this end, I'm quite a bit higher once I get to this point, and that just makes everything a bit easier, and this terrain is rather easy to work with. So that's why I went there. Going up to the iron ore mine is maybe a bit iffy. I'm gonna have to see how that works out. Maybe I should take another look at Railroad Studio and just check the coordinates, check the height difference, and see what the average grade between the two would be. If that's still acceptable, or maybe if it's going a bit too far. Then again, could always have a bit of a switchback or something. There are definitely options to deal with this, and I'll have to see how it's gonna work out. But yeah, that's everything so far from my end. Let me know what you think about anything that I mentioned today. And thanks for watching. I'm not gonna make any promises on future content. Again, this is just me seeing what works for me right now, and I'm gonna stick to what works, and I'm gonna abandon what doesn't. So anyways, once again, thanks for watching. Have a good one, and till next time. Bye bye.